Sana Hudson lost 30 pounds with intermittent fasting. Thank you, Sana, for being here and for being willing to talk about your weight loss journey. So, why don't you just give yourself an introduction and tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for having me on. It's definitely an honor to talk to you today. My name is Sana. I am a registered nurse. I live in upstate New York, and I love intermittent fasting. And I guess that's what we're here to talk about. But generally speaking, I am a wife. I have three children. Um, what else? What else is there to know? I don't know. I keep it pretty simple, and that's how I like to just live my life. I am a Christian, and that's a very important part of my life as well, of course. But yeah, I am your everyday average girl. So,
Awesome. Well, why don't you give us a rundown of how you're finding success with weight loss? How much have you lost, and
Mhm.
how long has it taken?
So I started intermittent fasting back in 2017. Um, this was like 2 years after I had my third baby. Um, so it felt like my first because he has his own personality. But this was 2 years after I had my third baby, and I really did want to lose some weight. I didn't have much weight to lose. I want to say from I started intermittent fasting, or from I wanted to lose weight until I got to my goal weight, it was maybe around 6 months, or it could have been a little bit less than that actually. And I lost about 30 pounds. Yep.
Excellent. And
Mhm.
so, what was your daily routine like with intermittent fasting?
So it kind of varied. Let me tell you how I even got into it.
Okay.
It's a funny story. I was on YouTube, and I was just looking up some different methods of weight loss because I tried so many different things. I tried different types of diets. I even did like the Dukan diet, which was it's a diet where it's mainly focusing on just protein, but it was very low fat and low carb, which it's the recipe for disaster. Okay. Um, and I was just fed up. I even did like a liquid diet for a very short period of time. I mean, I knew within like the first 2 days that was just not for me. Um, and I was on YouTube, like I said, and there was this guy that came on, and he was kind of the complete opposite of me, like very much into like weightlifting and going to the gym and all of that stuff. And I'm like, okay, what can this guy say that could benefit me in any way? So long story short, he talked about not eating his first meal until like 12 p.m. and just fasting up until then. And I said to myself, it can't be this easy, right? So lo and behold, a month later, I was down 10 pounds. And I was very happy about that because the other diets that I've tried before. I know intermittent fasting is not really a diet, but it didn't quite work out for me. And I was just thrilled to have lost that amount of weight without much effort,
Mm.
honestly.
Has weight always been a challenge, or was it just in adulthood after your babies, the weight had just kind of hung around?
It was a challenge, I would say, growing up as well. Um, I remember elementary school, definitely struggling with weight, um, just struggling definitely. And then I want to say around middle school, probably my first year of high school, that summer, I disciplined myself. I don't know. Looking back, I'm like, how could I have been so disciplined? Um, and I lost a ton of weight to the point where, you know, those that were in my neighborhood that knew me, they're like, "Oh my God, is she okay?" They thought I
Mm.
was like I was sick or something, but I really needed to lose the weight just for my self-confidence. So I would say that I didn't really struggle with it from high school up until, through me getting married. I got married pretty young. I got married at 19,
So did
started
I.
having kids. Yeah. Yep. I started having children. And after my first and second baby, I lost all the weight, especially after my first, like people couldn't believe that I was even pregnant,
Uh-huh.
so I lost that weight pretty quickly. The second baby, I would say took a little bit more effort, but definitely after the third, I knew that I needed to, because I didn't feel like myself anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So was there a particular like day, a moment where you just said, I've got to lose the weight, or was it just kind of like a gradual, like I need to do something about this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I went to the I forget which store it was actually, but I knew it was a department store
Mm.
that had well-lit mirrors.
Oh.
And I know. And I felt like I haven't seen myself in that particular light before in quite a while anyway.
Mhm.
Because I love online shopping. I prefer to shop online. But anyway, I went to the store. I think I was trying to get something for one of my children, but I decided to pick something off the rack that I liked. And I just got a close up in the mirror and I'm like, no, this isn't me, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
And I think that was the defining moment, funny enough. Funny you ask. And I really knew that I had to seek out the answer for this weight loss to happen.
Hmm. So you lost weight. I mean, that has been what, 6 years ago, right?
I want to say, okay, so I'll backtrack a little bit
Okay.
to what happened during that time period. So, like I said, I did start with intermittent fasting. During the first month, I lost the 10 pounds. This was around end of 2017. I want to say November 2017 through to early 2018. After that month um, of that 10-pound loss, I stalled.
Mm.
Okay. And I know that I've heard you talk about this before, Kayla, how at that time keto was very popular
Hmm.
and that you resisted the urge to, get into keto. But I went into keto. Okay. And I combined the ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting.
Hmm.
Um, and it did break the stall. And I was able to lose the rest of the weight.
Hmm.
And I maintained that weight, I want to say from 20, so that was 2018, early 2018 that I got down to my goal weight, which was around, well, my goal weight was actually changed, or didn't change, but I surpassed my goal weight. I'll say
Hmm.
this.
Okay.
So I started I was like 170 pounds maybe. Um, and then I got down to like 130,
Hmm.
35, 38, like high 130s.
Hmm.
And, so that was a little bit over 30 pounds
Hmm.
weight loss. Um, and I was pretty comfortable there. And maintained that weight loss through to, I want to say to 2020 or so. And then I fell out of keto for various reasons. I started to have some, issues with like electrolyte imbalances. My sleep was getting, just it was interfering with my sleep. So it
Hmm.
was good in the short term. I mean, I wouldn't even really call it short term because I did it for almost 4 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was quite a while. I know it seems short term, but it became a way of life for me.
Mhm.
And I'm still, to this day, I feel better with a higher protein type approach. However, I'm a little bit more inclusive with my diet.
Mhm.
I'm not as strict as I was,
Mhm.
especially in my keto days,
Mhm.
um, because I knew that had I given intermittent fasting alone, just by itself, a
Mhm.
chance, I
Mhm.
probably would have broken through the stall. But
Right. Yeah.
I was just so eager to just get the weight off.
Mhm.
So I came off keto in 2020, early 2021-ish.
Mhm.
And I knew that I needed to get back into just my fasting regimen. I wouldn't say that I completely went back to just eating late at night because after, eating within a certain window of time for so long. So by the way, when I was losing weight, I I usually ate between like say 10 in the morning to like around 4.
Mhm.
That was kind of like my typical window of eating. Sometimes it was like a 16:8, but most of the time 18:6 or 16:8. That was kind of my window because I did like to cut off eating earlier in the day. I just felt better. It worked with my work schedule and all that. Um, but I did gain back a few pounds, but nothing close to the 170 that I was resting at.
Mhm,
But I went back to like 155
mhm,
and I saw that it was creeping back up, and I said, you know what? I really need to rein this back in, right? So that's what I did. I just decided this time around, I'm going to focus on just the fast.
mhm,
I'm going to have carbs. I'm going to have, protein, fats, carbs. I'm not going to, discriminate with the macronutrients. And that really did work for me because it took the stress.
mhm,
I feel like I had a lot of stress with what I was eating, focusing on, and I think my body kind of was taking a toll on my body.
mhm.
And also I would say even mentally too, because I come from a background, I'm Jamaican. So
Uh-huh.
um so if you know anything about our culture, we're very big on food and we have really delicious food. And some of the foods that I grew up with, I mean, I felt like I couldn't partake in it
Mhm.
anymore. And I just didn't want to live like that.
Right.
And I honestly felt like that's what made me fall out of keto in the first place.
Mm,
I still think it's a really good diet. I definitely would recommend it to those that are having blood sugar issues, that are diabetic, because some people really do need to dial their carbs back in.
mhm,
If, depending on the stage of illness they're in.
mhm,
But I do find that most people just adjusting their window of eating, they can find the same success with a balancing blood sugar and things like that.
mm,
So,
mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, the cultural aspect of
hmm
eating was really kind
hmm
of what did not fit. Is that's pretty much it was like you felt fine on keto, but it was this other
yeah,
cultural aspect that was really kind of putting a lot of stress on it. So, which is
correct,
really
correct.
interesting. I do feel like that's not something people talk about or think about a lot. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm a Southerner, and
Right.
Southern food is not keto.
All right.
So that's really interesting. So you're a nurse, and so you've done
Yes.
keto and you've also done fasting. And are
Mhm.
you and feel free to say that's that's private if
No,
it's
that's fine.
too private, but have you looked at your own blood sugars and that kind of thing and compared that, or what have been your results?
Right. So I'm actually going for blood work later this month.
Mhm,
But I will say that prior to intermittent fasting and keto, because I combined the two at the time,
mhm,
um, I definitely did compare, like I had blood work that I did in 2013,
mhm,
and I compared it to blood work that I had done around 2019, 2020.
mhm,
And my triglycerides went from, I believe it was from 116 to like 45 or something like that,
mhm,
something crazy like that.
mhm,
So definitely my triglycerides went down, my HDL went up. My total cholesterol did go up, which is typical on keto, but I believe that if you're practicing a low carb lifestyle, that is not to be feared. I mean, at least that's what the newer research is suggesting,
mhm,
that it's not to be feared. And you have persons that have hypercholesterolemia, which is familial
mhm,
in nature too. So so definitely my markers did change. My A1C was at a 4.7, I believe, which is like, you know, really great.
mhm. Right.
So I would love to compare that again, just do another comparison now that I'm just exclusively intermittent fasting. So that'll be interesting. But I have done fasting blood sugars at home
Mhm,
just to test. I was interested in doing that. I
mhm,
did share that on my Instagram page a few months ago.
mhm,
And my fasting blood sugars were in range.
mhm.
Definitely not as low as it was on keto, because
Right.
obviously cutting out all those carbs. So I would have like a fasting blood sugar of like, say, in the high 60s, low 70s, which for some people they would term that hypoglycemic, but in the context of the diet that I was on, it
Mhm.
was perfectly normal.
Mhm.
And now it's like in the 80s or, 90s, which
Mhm.
is still normal. You definitely want it under 100.
Right, right. Yeah.
Mhm.
When you're actually in the fasting window, what do
Mhm.
you do? And when you're in the eating window, what does a typical day look like? Do you have any kind of rules like no snacking, or do you have a certain number of meals, or are you just kind of loosey-goosey?
So that has completely evolved over time. Okay, so I'll address the snacking first.
Okay.
So I, for the most part, don't snack. I just have either one meal or two solid meals. Usually, if I'm having two meals, they're like, medium-sized meals or just one large meal.
Mhm.
Um, when I did keto, it was very much like ingrained, no snacking. And, I was a huge snacker even before I started intermittent fasting. And I think that was my downfall. I was never really a big volume eater.
Mhm.
I know some people are very much volume eaters. I was never a volume eater, especially when I worked in the rehab center as a nurse in the rehab. I'm not in ortho rehab anymore, but during those days when I did start intermittent fasting, I did discover that, when the families would come in with the treats for us nurses at the nurses station, I'd be snacking all day. And granted, I was on my feet most of the time.
Mhm.
And I think had I not been so active at work, I would have gained even more weight,
Mhm. Mhm.
honestly. So I was always grazing throughout the day. So that's one thing I kind of wanted to conquer. And I'm glad that I did
Mhm.
because it's very rare that I snack in between those two meals. So if I do at 18:06, I might eat at 1 p.m. And I sometimes it's like even before the 6 hour is up before I have the second meal.
Mhm.
And that's typically it. I might drink something in between, but very, very little with the snacking
Mhm.
with that. Now, and then when it comes to what I have during the fast, so that has also just progressively changed over time.
Mhm.
So when I started intermittent fasting, there was no real concept of this clean, dirty fasting
Right. Yeah.
type thing, which I like you, I don't like the terminology either. It's like where I believe that you meet people where they are. And
Mhm.
even with my coaching business that I do, I meet people where they are. So when I started out, I did because I was on keto as well. I did the bulletproof coffee. So I
Mhm.
had coconut oil, I had butter, I had probably cinnamon or other things that, in my coffee. And that was kind of like a meal replacement for me almost.
Yeah.
So right before I went out to work, I was at that time a hospice nurse. And I would, before I went out on the road, I would have that. And then come home and have dinner and maybe have like something light at the end of the day, maybe like some tea with something like almond flour crackers or something crazy like that. Um, and that was my coffee.
Mhm.
Then I just started putting heavy cream in my coffee, and it was just heavy cream. And when I started back with intermittent fasting in 2022, that's when like end of 2021, 2022, after I had gained a little bit more weight and I wanted to lose it again, I went with the advice from Dr. Jason Fung, with just putting 1 tablespoon of cream in my coffee because I came off keto. Um, that taste for the high fat
Mhm.
coffee just went. Um, I used to love a bulletproof coffee, and then when I tried it again, it didn't sit well with me,
Mhm.
my palate anymore.
Right.
And so I started just adding back the 1 tablespoon of heavy cream. I did that for quite a while. I did lose some of the weight back. Well, I'm back down to my well, I would say I'm in the 140s, kind of like you, like
Mhm.
hovering in that 140s. We're actually the same height, by the way,
Oh,
five
nice.
six. Yeah.
We're like twins.
I know you mentioned that. And I kind of like have like a 5 pound range and a 10 pound range.
Mhm.
And I definitely I looked more into like the research of intermittent fasting because I knew I was starting this coaching up, and I wanted to try black coffee during my
Mhm.
fast. So, which was hard. It's just hard for me at first. Like it really was. I even did said I was going to do a challenge in April, this April 2023.
Mhm.
Um, of just doing a whole month of just black coffee because I
Mhm.
had gotten down to just the 1 tablespoon of cream,
Mhm.
which is what I enjoyed anyway,
Right.
because I didn't like the 3, 4 tablespoons
Mhm.
of heavy cream that
Mhm.
I was having. I know you like half and half. I
Mhm.
never really did well with half and half. It was okay in a pinch, but I always preferred heavy cream.
Oh, I
Um,
love heavy cream.
oh
But
yeah.
I love the taste of it. It's just more expensive. So,
Oh, okay. And then so I went back to just studying more about, autophagy and things like that. And um after a while, I just started drinking my coffee black
Mhm.
during the fasted window, which now is kind of what I do. Not for any rhyme or reason, because I do feel like you can still have success with weight loss. I was just looking more into other benefits that could come from it. And funny enough, I actually enjoy my coffee black now, which
Oh,
is I
nice.
never thought would be a thing.
Right.
I even iced. I prefer hot coffee.
Mhm.
And if I do have coffee with cream now, it's usually later on in the day, like in the afternoon when I open my window,
Mhm.
and I prefer it like steamed heavy cream. So like
Mhm.
if the heavy cream is steamed, it's fine, but it's crazy how our taste buds change because I would actually grab for the black coffee now.
Mhm.
Not all coffee is created equal.
True.
So, and I can't just have it any old way. I have an espresso machine.
Mhm.
I know I'm a little bougie with that
Nice. Yeah.
espresso machine, but I love an espresso. And I feel like if I get like a regular, like lower quality coffee, black, I can't. It has this burnt taste to it
Mhm.
that I don't like. And I usually do like coffee that's like a darker roast, but I find when drinking it black, unless it's iced, by the way. If it's iced, it can be darker roast, but
Mhm.
if it's hot, I prefer more of a lighter roast, and I honestly enjoy it either way now. But in the fasted window, to circle back to your question, um, I do have it either black or I'll have sparkling water.
Mhm. Okay.
Keep it simple. Yeah,
Awesome. So, so now you're in maintenance, right? Like you're
yeah.
not trying to actively lose any more weight. So, are there any challenges that you still face?
I would say yes, because I one thing that I really took from you, Kayla, you always quote that you always make mention of that quote. I forget who it's from now. That whatever is not measured is not managed. Whatever is
Oh
not,
yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah. I'm
I
not
think it's
saying.
Peter Drucker, right? What gets
Oh,
measured gets
okay.
managed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. And I took that with me when I restarted um my fasting journey. I kind of binge watch your videos, and I like that you're very motivational in terms of looking at the mindset piece of intermittent fasting, and not just the eating aspect or the fasted window aspect, but all the other tips and tricks that go along with it, because it very much is a mental game too. Um, and I know that in maintenance, there are times when I am lower on my range, and there are times when I'm higher up on my range,
Mhm.
and wanting to be in that sweet spot, but just being comfortable knowing that, okay, you have a range. And for me, I have like a 5 pound range, which I would prefer to stay
Mhm.
in, but then I also have a 10 pound range, which I know that, okay, once I see that I'm getting close to that 10 pound, straying away from that 10
Mhm.
pound increment or 5 pound increment that I set for myself, then I know, okay, it's time to pump the brakes, or
Right.
maybe I'll need to look into what I'm doing or not doing. And like you, I know like movement is big for me.
Mhm.
So um, I like to walk. I really do. I have a treadmill in my basement that I go and I walk. And if I haven't been walking for a couple days, like I want to say week or so, I've been so busy. I'm now working from home, which is like another transition. So I
Yeah.
think depending where, what you're doing at that particular time in your life, intermittent fasting can change because
Mhm.
when I was working at the rehab center, I was always on my feet.
Mhm.
And then now working from home, I have to remind myself that I need to move, so getting those steps in before work, I find, even on the treadmill, um, I feel so much better when I do. And when I don't, um, my weight goes up a little bit more into
Mhm.
that closer to that 10-pound um, range that I have. And so I noticed those little things.
Mhm.
But I really do feel like weighing every day, which I still do.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's important because a lot of times things can get away from you, and maybe there'll come a day that I may not, but I doubt it. I've gotten so much into the pattern of doing it daily. It's kind of like, doing anything else
Mhm.
daily, and I feel like that really does keep me in check.
Mhm.
So,
Very good. So you said you had that 5 pound range and the 10 pound range, which
mhm,
I love that idea. That's the
mhm,
like any kind of thing where you can kind of have like, here's my ideal, here's what I'm accepting. So
yeah.
like if you get like above 10 pounds, have you had that moment where you did get above 10 pounds? And then
Mhm,
what was your self-talk like?
mhm.
How did you approach it?
So for me, it's more about just reevaluating, just what, I mean, of course, at least for me, 10 pounds or is usually not much noticeable for other
Yeah.
people that
Mhm.
like it is for me.
Right.
And like I said to my husband, I think it was a couple months ago, I said to him, that I'm up like on this, like I'm like 10 pounds heavier than I was in this picture because we were talking about a picture that we took. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm like around, and he's like, he didn't even
Mhm.
notice,
Yeah,
but
they
I
can't.
sure noticed. And I'm pretty sure that I could still fit the same in whatever outfits that I had on then. But
Mhm.
for me, I just knew that it was a slippery slope. So for me, it's just
Gotcha.
about reassessing, kind of like looking at you know, what I'm doing, not doing, like again with the steps,
Mhm.
if I'm slacking a little bit with my
Mhm.
steps.
Mhm.
I not that I feel like exercise is definitely the majority of where weight loss is concerned, but
Mhm.
I feel like if you feel better, your body will follow suit.
Yep.
So that piece, the exercise piece is one, just walking. I don't do much of anything else.
Mhm.
Once in a while, if I feel like it, I might do some body weight exercises. I have like free weights that I might use once in a while, but that's more of like whenever I'm in the mood to do so.
Right.
And then another piece is me over consuming highly processed food.
Mhm.
And while I don't restrict anymore in terms of diet, there are times when I know that, okay, I like to stick most of the time to like real whole foods,
Mhm. Right.
even though I'm still having carbs. I still like cooking at home more. Once in a while, like if I'm going out to, an ice cream for ice cream with the kids or something like that, I don't feel guilty anymore for having that treat. But I just know that if it becomes like a constant thing or like more than once a day type
Mhm.
thing over a long period of time, I might see the scale, it reflect on the scale.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, it's just a piece of information that I use, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna now go back to keto because
Right.
I did consider it honestly. Funny that you mentioned that because you know the first thing would be, okay, what extreme thing can I do to get there? But I say to myself all the time, you know do what feels comfortable and what feels sustainable.
Mhm.
And I feel like in the long run, I think that's what wins, because not the thing that you do in the extreme that you can only do for so long and then your body just rebels against you,
Right.
but
Yeah.
what that you can sustain, and that's always the way to go.
Awesome. Well, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone else who they're maybe on their weight loss journey right now and maybe they're struggling a little bit? What would you say to them?
I would say take it one day at a time.
Mm.
Weight loss is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Um, it's you just have to do what works for you, and not, I would say, not follow what someone else's plan, so to speak, but do what is comfortable for you. Like if you want to start out, with cream in your coffee, I'm just using that example again. Um, don't feel like you need to change because so and so is doing so and such and such. If you want to change anything about your eating window, your fasting window, let it be because you decided that you're ready to to evolve into a different phase of your fasting journey. So for me, it was a very gradual thing for me with my fasting window, my eating window. There are times when my eating window is a little bit longer, a little shorter, but be flexible. You have to be flexible on this intermittent fasting journey. Just know that what might work for you 2 years ago won't work for you now. You might have a new job, you might relocate, whatever the case may be. Just make it fit your life, rather than trying to fit your life into it.
Mm,
So
love that. Love that. So is there anything else you'd like to share about your journey?
it's a work in progress. I think that even in maintenance, you still discover new things,
Mhm.
about what works for you, what doesn't, and just adapting to that, on a day-to-day basis. Um, I do have a coaching program that I started called Identifast, and I named it Identifast because I feel like we all have a fasting ID. I thought about the ID badge that I used to carry at work when I used to work in the rehab. Like we have our own ID, what is right for us,
Mhm.
and pair that with fasting, Identifast. So um, and I started the group coaching program. I do individual coaching as well. But when I started the group coaching program, one of the participants lost over 50 pounds in the 12-week span.
Wow.
Super proud of her. And others had great successes as well. So for me to be able to spread that word with others has just been a joy. It
Awesome.
really has. So.
Awesome. So if people want to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
So I have a channel on Instagram. It's called Identifast, IDENTYFAST. I have challenges over there. I'll announce like when I'm having a new challenge coming up. The last challenge that we had was the Winter to Wonderland challenge, which that participant did go into Wonderland. Um, during that challenge. So I post there. I do have a podcast that I'm revamping. I did start it up, but I'm revamping it,
Okay.
by the same name, Identifast Podcast. I have a modest YouTube following. um, I don't really post much on YouTube. I'm pretty shy, but just video in general. But I do love working with others on a one-on-one basis
Mhm.
in a group environment. I feel like we learn from one another
Mhm.
best a lot of times. So what might be working for one person may very well work for the other person in the
Mhm.
group.
Wow.
It may not as well, but you bounce ideas off each other, and it's an environment where we lift each other up. So
Awesome.
you can find me on that platform as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sana, for sharing your story. There
Yeah.
was so much good, actionable stuff in there. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
If you consider yourself an intermittent fasting success story and you would like to share your journey on my channel, please reach out to me at interviews@sixmilestosupper.com. I want to take a moment to thank all the insiders who have joined this channel. Insiders get access to my vlog, and in my vlog, I talk about how I'm implementing intermittent fasting in my own life in maintenance. I also talk about experiments I'm running, and I give behind the scenes looks at this channel. Insiders also get shoutouts and access to a weekly members only live. If you'd like to become an insider, just click the join button below. Thanks!